I'm really hoping that you can cooperate with me.
I know, I'm crazy.
I expect cooperation. And,
My youngest daughter said, maybe you need to name this buffet.
you know,
I mean, it's starting to get a little bit epic.
being a good sport and just
I don't know what I would name her. I feel like this is a her.
work with me. You're going to work with me, right?
Esmeralda.
You are going to work with me, right? I'm trying to help you.
Hortense.
I'm trying to help you.
Gertrude.
A little cooperation, please.
Damn.
So this is high maintenance.
Oh.
Nobody wants to do windows.
I am this close to chucking you into the pit of despair.
It has a whole other side.
God, your wood is so ridiculous. But it's happening tomorrow. She's getting finished. I'm serious. Don't try and stop me. You're like, we've been waiting to see this buffet for like 2 months. It's way too much buildup. It's just a buffet. I'm gonna go in and take a nice hot shower.
Every person has a story. And you know what? So does every piece of furniture. Come along with me today, and I'll tell you a furniture fable. Hi everyone, I'm Andy. Welcome to Furniture Fables. Well folks, here she is. Esmeralda Gertrude Hortense Fastrada Klein, also known as the Buffet, previewed and promised back in February. She is a true antique, so everyone please do a quick curtsy. And her previous owner tells me she was originally owned by a family up in San Francisco before winding up in storage for a very long time and then being passed along as no one really felt up to dealing with her. The original mirrored back piece has been given away, unfortunately, and someone had started to sand the piece, but these old finishes are tough, and so I think they got a little overwhelmed, understandably, and threw in the towel. Both of the buffet's glass panel doors were present and the glass was intact, and both sets of shelves were there, so that's all good news. But the general condition of the buffet? Chewed? Corroded? Little chewed? Little corroded? Yeah, rough. Rough. She's a little rough.
Whoa.
Look at the back of this piece.
Oh, there go the quails. Why don't you go chase a quail? You just want to help? Okay.
The back of it is just as beautiful to me as the front. All of these nails are hand driven, but what is so extra amazing is what is over here.
Written on the back is a name and some numbers. The name Gus Johnson could possibly be a maker's signature, or it could be who the buffet was actually constructed for.
The numbers that I'm seeing are 2-11, I think, which might mean February of 1911, which would be about right. Someone might be tempted to give it like a cleanup sand. It does have some paint splashes on it here and there, but I am just gonna very carefully dust it, clean it, and not touch that at all, because that's like a little artifact for sure.
Yeah, in a world full of stapled backer boards, this solid planked back with its hand-driven nails is a real eye-catcher. So, knowing I was at the beginning of a potentially epic journey, I began. I started by removing and inspecting the drawers. We've got ink stains, not uncommon in older, unprotected drawer bottoms. And we've got quite the overspray, or perhaps overslop, of stain and finish on the drawer sides. I noticed that the drawers all sat well and the slides were in good working order, but they were all quite sticky, most likely because the wood was very, very dry. The interior of the piece was in good shape, but again, very, very dry and not sealed up in any way. And great news, the 2 doors sat nicely in place. I set them off to the side, and then I started to vacuum out the sideboard, checking for any signs of mildew or insect life. Thankfully, there was none. And again, just very glad to see all of the piece's components felt strong and solid. Because of the age of the buffet, I thought it would be a good idea to do a quick lead test, and thankfully it came out negative. You might be thinking I was going to do a super aggressive clean, but actually I didn't want to do that. Introducing water seemed like a terrible idea, so I kept things very, very simple, and I used my simple green wipes, which I knew would degrease the piece while also removing some, if not all, of that ancient buildup. While cleaning, let's just take a sec to admire the sloppy as all heck finish on the side here. Whoa, can you believe this? I have to say I was really surprised to see this kind of work on a piece of this age. I'm feeling a little judgy. I gotta say. And as I started some exploratory sanding, I began to wonder more about the construction of this piece. Well, this is an interesting piece for me. It doesn't appear to be what you would think of as finish wood quality. I might be wrong about this, but it doesn't appear to me to be that way. I thought for a minute it was maybe redwood. I do feel like the back was maybe redwood, but I don't really know. And I take comfort in the fact that I've gone on some woodworking discussion sites, and folks who regularly do woodworking have species discussions and they send each other pictures, and there's back and forth. Is this teak or walnut? What do you think? And well, everybody, we gotta wait for Joe to weigh in. Usually there's one guy, Joe, who really knows. And so identifying the species is not always as simple as one would think it might be. It's possible that this guy was kind of maybe a slightly less expensive version, right, of a solid walnut or solid oak version. There are definitely solid oak versions of this sideboard that were created in the early 20th century. This is not that. The reason why I really want to know is because I'm trying to basically figure out, should I try to salvage and show off some amount of the timbers on this piece? Or is it really not worth it? Is there a reason that the entire thing was painted, essentially, right? It was painted. In the state that it was in, it's not, the wood is not being featured. It's just brown paint, basically. So I'm trying to kind of work that out in my head. Like, would I do the top with the wood showing, or try to strip those doors, the glass panel doors? So yeah, back at it. Yeah, she was kind of a mystery to me with her not fancy wood and very not fancy finish. I decided I did want to try for a blend of paint and wood for my design idea, and that I would not worry too much about completely removing the old finish from the parts I wanted to paint, but instead focus on smoothing them down as much as possible. I knew I wasn't going to get the piece to look perfect It's going to have a rustic kind of vibe, but tidy rustic look. A modern rustic look, if that makes sense. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to sand through this finish on the top, but using a 60 grit paper actually worked pretty well. John came out and helped me lay the buffet on its back so I could finish sanding that top edge. And then I worked around the body, smoothing down all the many rough spots. As I worked, I climbed back up the grit ladder, so to speak, and I ignored the blotchiness, instead focusing on the smoothness. Here you can see where I literally had to chisel out some of that old buildup. Yeah, that's a lot of tartar buildup there. Also, you can see here that we have a lot of rippling or waving in the wood, which I believe has to do with compression of the wood grain as the tree is actually growing. But usually in fine furniture, the wood has been cut so that that doesn't happen, which was another sign that these timbers were not exactly the highest quality, most expensive pieces. I took the opportunity also while it was on its back to do a good vacuum of the bottom, and then I sanded out the nicks on the feet. So I decided that the best way to start, at least, to attack the old finish on the drawer and door fronts was with chemicals. So I grabbed this new to me chemical stripper called Lead Out by Behr. Yes, this piece had tested negative for lead, but I was curious about how this chemical in particular would perform, so I went ahead and mixed it up. You just add that packet of lead stabilizing powder and then stir until it kind of looks like this silver gray slime. More evidence of our not very fine finish. You can see how that old stain was slopped right over onto the glass. How long has that been sitting there, I wonder? After letting the chemicals sit for about 30 minutes, the finish was lifting nicely, so I began to scrape the doors. You may have noticed that I left those eye hook screws. I don't know. I think I was somehow charmed thinking about how maybe at one point they had helped mount a little interior curtain on the doors. Also, I decided to leave the hinges on while I was stripping just because I didn't feel like disturbing them, which was honestly a little bit silly because, of course, I ended up needing to remove them later. This kind of work is time-consuming and, it's a bit tedious and messy. And as I sat scraping these doors, I'll admit questioning my life choices, I began to wonder if the buffet behind me was a good-hearted buffet or if it was, plotting to take me out. I didn't know if it was a good witch or a bad witch. But then I was reminded of another buffet that was a real handful to work on, but ended up inspiring a now very dear character to me. The loyal, true, very manly, and always slightly unaware of how many wood jokes he's accidentally making. Biff.
Dylan, you're doing that all wrong, man. That's a hardwood you're handling there. He doesn't know half of what I know about hardwood. You know, we learned all about how to handle hardwood when we were teenagers. But still, I had to give him a refresher course just last year. Oh, for paint's sake, Dylan, I'll help you.
Yes, if you ever wonder why I feel the need to make those Paint by the Sea specials, I think it's because I get lost in the very quiet, solitary, and time-consuming furniture work. My mind starts to wander and write stories, literally, as I'm doing this work. I used the Behr cleaner and a brass brush to kind of help me clean up all the little bits that I could, and then I flipped the doors over and did the same thing on the other side. And then I scraped all 5 drawers. Once everything dried, I began sanding what was left of the old finish. I also cleaned up the bottoms and very messy sides of the drawers. Okay, it is time for some clear shellac. Why? Well, I had gotten the body about as smooth as I thought I could, and this clear shellac would do a couple of things for me. First of all, I knew it would block any tannins from bleeding up and into my paint, causing a stain. And second, I knew it would keep the paint from sinking into the wood itself, which was kind of like a little insurance policy for this old piece. If anyone wants to fully strip it in the future, it will be that much easier because the paint won't have soaked into the wood fibers. I used a roller and a chip brush to apply it all over the buffet. Once the shellac was dry, I mixed up some milk paint I had in this kind of pear green. Shades of green have been doing really well in my area, and I was thinking this beast of a gal could really use all the good luck I could give her, thus this shade of green. When you mix milk paint, you typically do it in a 1-to-1 ratio with water. It's usually much thinner than other paints, so you want to try and not worry about it when you see that thin coverage on that first coat. I applied 2 coats and then I did a quick cream-toned paint wash on the top. And then I stood back and I looked at it and decided I hated it. Well, okay, I didn't hate it, but I thought, nope. That's just not the direction Esmeralda wants to go in. I feel like I don't know, it just didn't seem like her. So, okay, I sanded back that paint wash off of the top. And then while I pondered colors some more, I got out my Bondo wood filler and mixed up a batch, and I filled in the holes on the top of the buffet that were left over from that no longer with us mirrored backboard. I also found a little crack in one of the drawer fronts, and so I filled that as well. By the way, I saw this clean sheet non-absorbent paper over on Katie Scott's channel, and I had to try it, and I gotta say, I'm a huge fan. It is great. You can mix up your Bondo, and then you can just tear away that top sheet, and into the trash it goes. The spreader will come clean once the filler is totally dry, so it's reusable and just super handy. I sanded back all of the Bondo, and then I got out this very appropriately named Rustic Wood Effects Water-Based Stain. This is by Behr. I think this sounds like our gal here. Water-based stains are so easy to work with. They are very similar to working with paint washes. Easy to clean up, easy to, sand back if you don't really like them. They usually won't be as even as an oil-based stain. You might see more patchiness, although oftentimes that can be managed through second or third coats. With this piece that, again, I'm just thinking I can't get too precious with it, this might be just the ticket. You want to spread this stain nice and evenly, not leaving any blotches. And then after letting it sit for about 5 minutes, you come back and wipe it back, anything that hasn't soaked in, with a lint-free rag and going in the direction of the wood grain.
Okay, so after I do not know how many hours of stripping and sanding, etc., on these doors, both sides, they still need more help. You can see here in all of those little grooves, right, for each of those glass panels, I've still got that ancient finish residue sitting all up in there. I could probably use a Dremel tool to help me dislodge that. But I actually went ahead and splurged for this little guy. Check this fun little tool out. This is called a pen sander. I've never used one before, but this, it seems, is just literally like the perfect tool for a situation like this. Has all of these different attachments, right? So you can choose whichever silhouette you think is going to be best for the job that you need. I'm going to try just this kind of basic square. I think that will work well. It'll kind of just sit right in there and can get in and get out all that. All you do then is turn, I'm going to turn this guy, that turns, and then that locks that in. And then it comes with all of these adorable little teeny tiny sandpapers in all of the shapes and all different grits. Isn't that adorable? Oh my gosh, it's so cute. Handy, yes, right? So let's give it a shot, shall we? Maybe it will actually work and can finish these doors. Strip those doors, strip those doors, strip those doors. They have been a handful, friends, these doors. It's not cute or pretty yet. I started in with my pen sander and found that it did indeed actually work. For the most part. It was great at grinding down the finish that was raised up, but, it didn't remove everything. But I figured that was okay. I had an idea for how I could deal with that, so I wasn't too worried. Oh, also it has a light on it, which is kind of cool. Okay, back to colors. So I have got the first coat of that water-based stain on the top, and I'm really liking it. But in the meantime, I have just decided that this green, I don't know how it's gonna look on camera, but in real life, she's just looking minty, friends. It's looking minty fresh. It's close, but no cigar. It's not hitting right. It's kind of a bummer because milk paint, I think, is a great choice for a piece like this, but I only have one other shade in milk paint currently, and it's not what I want either. And I don't want to go on a whole hunt for milk paint. I don't want to order a bunch and wait for it to come and all of that. So I went ahead and I grabbed this green that I just have here in stock. It's a much darker, much more olivey green. This is Bayberry by Fusion. I've done a couple of pieces in this, and it's a beautiful, lovely, earthy green. I'm gonna add a little water. Add a good little bit of water and give it a good stir. And let's see what this dark green does. Yeah, something about that pear green. It didn't read pear green to me. It was definitely kind of toothpastey. But as I applied the Bayberry, I started to relax. This shade felt much better for Esmeralda. It just kind of seemed like her. Back to the doors, once again, you can see that we still have some ancient residue on the glass. And really the only way I know how to deal with this is to just use a razor and scrape it off by hand. There's so much crud in these doors. It's so gross. You're gross. What was everyone thinking? That this was acceptable? Because it's not. Yeah, these doors, honestly, they could have been a fable unto themselves. Yeah. Wow. Still that much buildup after all the stripping and sanding and the pen sanding. Yeah. Wow.
Okay, I did my final finish sanding on the doors with a 220 grit paper. And then after quickly removing the hinges, I added my first layer of that rustic brown water-based stain to the doors. They sat for about 5 minutes, and then I added a second coat of the stain to the top. By the way, I found that the stain applied like a dream using just a simple foam brush. I flipped the doors over and added the stain to the other side. Don't worry, I don't have to worry about the glass because this is a water-based stain, and so it will come right off with just a basic glass cleaner. Then I stained the drawers, including the insides and the sides. And then everything got a second coat of stain. Oh yes, the interior. Right. The interior. Okay, I gave the inside of those two large side compartments a good sanding, and then I sanded the 4 shelves before giving them and the interior 2 coats of stain as well. Oh, and don't worry, at first I left the shelf bars that were nailed in. Someone had nailed some of them in, but then I went back and actually removed them carefully so that the shelves could be truly easily movable. And I added stain to where it was missing. So I'm noticing that you can kind of see there's these little spots where it's not picking up the stain. So I am going to grab a teeny tiny brush and a little bit of brown paint and cross my fingers and toes and just see if I can kind of disguise these little bits right in here. Yes, I was thrilled to see how well this chocolate paint actually was working. This rustic brown stain is great, I have to say. It's not trying to be fancy. It's not trying to be walnut or oak or mahogany. It is what I would call tree. It is the color of a tree. It is just a great basic brown. Okay, back again to the doors. Time to tape them up. I was so proud of my tape job. I had to show it off, I guess, to you. Sorry, I was starting to lose my mind a little bit there. I had realized that the interior edges had some kind of resin banding as part of how the glass was mounted into the door. And obviously that material hadn't picked up the stain as well as the wood. So my hope was that this chocolate paint would do the trick. While those edges dried, I added a second coat of Bayberry to the body. The next day, it was finally time to seal up all the stained elements with some satin poly top coat. By the way, the paint I use does contain a top coat, but I did end up going back and adding a layer of this same polyurethane to all of the painted elements as well. And then I made an executive decision to paint the two lower large drawers. Ooh, why? Well, okay, I felt that the paint to wood balance was kind of a little bit off. We just had too much of that brown. I wanted to see more of the green. And again, these timbers were shining up pretty okay. They're nice, they're okay, but they're not stunning. They're not, you know, gloriously beautiful. And one of the drawer fronts in particular had gone like a bit orange and was a little patchy. So this seemed like the best choice. I did 2 coats and then I sanded with a superfine grit pad before adding a third. I added a second coat of poly to my stained surfaces, and then I gave them a light sanding to remove any little hairs or dust that had landed in the top coat while it was drying, before giving everything a final third coat. Yes, you didn't think I forgot about the shelves, did you? Okay, time to remove that tape from the doors and clean up the glass and look through them and... yeah, see that the other side needs the same brown paint treatment. Yeah. Okay, deep sigh. I'm fine. Everything's fine. It's fine. It's all good. Okay.
This buffet has been out in the workshop for a good little chunk of time, 6 weeks, something like that. And the reason is because I was doing another show. If you were wondering, where were you, Andy? It's always, the answer is almost always I'm in a show and I'm just kind of overwhelmed and getting behind on furniture. I was in Pippin, if you know that one from the back in the 70s or the 80s. You can see it on YouTube with Ben Vereen and William Catt and Cheetah Rivera. It's a weird, wacky, fun show. It's highly satirical. I got to play Fastrada, Pippin's conniving stepmother, and I got to dance with fans and do all kinds of fun things, and just had an absolute blast. I find that the older I get, opportunities I have, that if they come up where I am invited to actually play a role on stage, I cannot say no. I love it so much.
Thanks for letting me share about that, my friends. Yes, I do indeed love getting to perform. I finished up my taping, and here you can see the difference that this brown paint treatment will hopefully make in how finished these doors look ultimately. Once they were both painted and dry, I sealed them up on the other side and then removed their tape. Okay, remember that broken
So I'm gonna
foot?
just pre-drill with it in here, like this right here.
I got John to come out and help me, as I had a feeling this was going to require some muscle.
Oh, the wood is very hard.
John came through with a Biff-like comment as he pre-drilled for me.
He doesn't know half of what I know about hardwood.
So if you have bonded to the natural feet, I'm very, very sorry, but I felt that the overall lines of the piece would be better served with them painted. So they all got 2 coats, and I also cleaned up the bottom rail, as well as under the top edge of the piece. Of course, none of that will be visible when it is upright, but I always like to have my pieces look clean and tidy from any angle. Okay, I can't believe it, but I think we're in the home stretch. I pulled out this lovely William Morris paper, Birds and Berries, Berries and Birds, and I added it to the backs of the side compartments. Their backs in the natural state look really lovely, but I just think this little hint, this little bit of pattern and color will be just lovely. And then I cleaned up and I sprayed the hinges and the screws in an antique rubbed bronze spray paint. I got out some furniture salve and I added it to the drawer slides on the inside of the buffet. And then I sealed and conditioned the drawer sides and the slides on the bottom of the drawers so that the action would be nice and smooth. Yeah, can you believe that? Here at the end, after all of this love, Esmeralda Hortense is still giving me all she's got, because later we pulled out a splinter the size of a paint stick from my thumb. Okay, it wasn't quite that big, but it was pretty big. She's a cranky one. She's a cranky old lady. Okay. This salve smells incredible. I believe this one is lemon verbena. This one is by Wise Owl. I discovered one of the doors was a little bit tight, so I quickly ground down the top inner edge of that door frame and then did a quick little paint touch-up. I grabbed some more of that wallpaper and then I lined all of the drawer bottoms, and because she's a special piece, I centered the patterns on the 2 upper drawers. And I made sure to keep the pattern facing the correct way on the bottoms. How about some 21st century tech for our ancestor? After adding a name and a date of my own, I revisited that planked back and I gave the whole thing a layer of salve. She got some period-appropriate hardware, and I couldn't believe it. I was actually done. Okay, do you remember our rusty red relic? Coated and corroded, a busted behemoth waiting in storage for someone to befriend her? Well, say goodbye to corrosion and cranky attitudes, 'cause here she is now. Wow, Esmeralda Hortense Gertrude Fastrada Klein, you're looking pretty fine. In her new rich green suit and rustic wood accents. Our old friend looks like she's got a new lease on life. So how much did my ancestral friend cost me? Well, I spent about $15 on stain, $15 on paint, $20 on wallpaper. That pen sander was $60. I used about $15 worth of stripper. The pulls were $20, about $20 worth of top coat, and then I'll say another $30 for wipes, cleaner, sanding pads, spray paint, salve, rags, tape, etc., bringing my total out-of-pocket cost to $195. So what should I list her for? Well, as usual, I would of course love your input, and I think I'll do a little bit more research, but for now, I'm thinking she might actually demand a little bit over $1,000, maybe $1,100, something like that. I hope you enjoyed this epic ancestral fable. If so, please make sure to give me a thumbs up, and please let me know, what did you think about her color scheme? Did you like her darker, richer vibe, or would you have gone with a lighter, beachier feel? And of course, what did you think about those doors? Were they worth all of the toil in the end? Or should I have just painted them? Also, should I paint this door green? And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next chapter. Esmeralda and I are going to go out for a celebratory drink right after I take a nap. Vintage and antique, getting along just fine. Thank you so much for joining me, my friends. I will see you next time for more Furniture Fables.